I flipped this thing down off the sawhorses. It's definitely heavier on the back than the front, so it kind of wanted to tilt backwards, but it appears to be relatively strong. So, I'm standing on it, and it's going to have significantly more support in that the back section that goes down to here is going to be able to tie in the base to the back wall as well. Plus, I'm going to have fiberglass on the outside of these walls as well. So I have a few places where epoxy dripped through my foam bond there to the wood, so I'll have to sand this back down. I also want to kind of curve that corner line a little bit, so I'm not sure if I'm going to hit it with a router or just hit it with a knife at a 45-degree angle or what, to kind of make that a curve going around. These guys I'm going to trim off shorter, but I don't know if I want to do that right now. I think I'll leave them sticking all the way out and just cut a hole in the fiberglass, put the fiberglass over them, and then I'll trim those down maybe even after I paint the sucker to kind of decide how long I want them. I'll probably mix up a batch of the glass bead epoxy putty to kind of pour into that, and then also to kind of, fill in corner gaps like this to make it nice, smooth transition. And of course, before I fiberglass this, I'm going to take out these screws. They were just to hold that in until the glue dried. I bought this set of round-over router bits on clearance several years ago for just this type of situation. The real question is, do I knock down these epoxy drips first, or just round over the whole thing and hope it works? This is the first time I've used a round over bit, and I'm sure it'd be easier with a table router instead of a handheld trim router. But hey, nothing like learning on the job. Well, that answers the question of knocking down the epoxy first. The router base needs to follow a straight line. I suppose I could flip the router in from this side and cut it. Let's just do that. Ignore that chipping sound. It worked beautifully. That left a little bit of sawdust, or wood chips, a little bit bigger than sawdust, to clean up, but other than that, I am pretty happy with the curve it put in there. It's going to be great for putting fiberglass around. Round over bit is my new favorite router bit. Look at the top of that thing. I can just put a piece of fiberglass on and it'll wrap right around that nicely. And these corners look really nice. I'm not sure, the fiberglass might wrinkle a little bit, those compound corners. Got this here. There's a little bit of a mark there. I might have to sand the front a little to make it flat. But with the exception of this little bit right down here, which is going to be under most of the seat there, so it won't really matter too much, that works really nicely. I might even do the inside corners of, and I'm definitely doing the outside corner, but the inside corners of all around in here too. This thing works so well on wood, I gotta try it on styrofoam. Rips just slightly, but darn, that's better than I can do with a razor knife. Man, I should have been doing this to all my deck boards. That's much better than a 45-degree cut with a razor knife. Makes a little bit of mess, but that's what vacuums are for. I hit everything with 120 grit sandpaper, knocked down the little ridges left over from some of the routing work. So now it's time to put fiberglass on top of a lot of these things in preparation for big thing of fiberglass, which you're going to go down this side all the way around the back and up the other side. I'll have to flip it over for that. I have these really nice rounded over pieces of bare wood with fiberglass coming up this side, and I'm going to be putting a giant sheet of fiberglass all the way around the back. So first, I'm going to be covering this wood with these little fiberglass cloth tapes, and so they will wrap around there nicely, tying into this fiberglass and then being overlapped by that fiberglass, so I don't have to come all the way to the edge all the way around. Wrapping around here, I have a second piece there, which is cut to go around all this funkiness. And then instead of making this piece super long, I just did another little piece there, and I have the long piece here that's going to overlap with those two guys there a little bit. So that way I can get the fiddly bits done right, and then just overlap a giant long piece without having a long piece flopping around while I'm trying to get fiddly bits and getting it cut in exactly the right length at both ends. While I'm doing this, since I'll have the epoxy mixed, I've also cut some panels like this that are going to go underneath and around these joins between the sidewalls and this back deck board, because that is the point that I think will have the most mechanical stress. The front board for the seat has the wooden supports underneath, so it's pretty darn well supported. The back one just has to tie into this big mass of fiberglass here, so the joint there is kind of important. Have the fiberglass tape around the entire top edge here, and I had enough left over to do that panel and this side of this panel, and then I ran out of epoxy resin. I have 3 more pieces here. I'll do these two and that side of that panel the next time I have epoxy out for some other part of the project. Flip the bench down on its back. I've cut out sections here. That's the 2-inch wide fiberglass tape, and this is a 6-inch wide fiberglass tape. So I'll do this front here, then over there, that front there. I also have the remainder of these 3 guys, so those 2 on either side of this panel and this one here on that panel right down there. I'm going to be doing a vertical application down there, but they should be pretty tacky because I'm going to put those up near the end after I get these guys that are going to be visible in place. Okay, it's time to mix up some more epoxy putty. I want to fill in the gaps around the outside of this tube and places like this where it's not smooth. If I have, this hole here for the screw where the screw used to be. If I have any extra, I might put some along some of the little gaps in here, but my priority are like these big holes, places like that where it's not smooth for the fiberglass to wrap around, and then this bit here. And of course I'm going to be sanding down some of these fiberglass runs here before I put a big long piece of fiberglass over the entire back here. And this is going to be visible, so I'm trying to get it somewhat smooth. I have used 25 grams of glass beads and about 25 grams of milled fiber. And the majority of this, volume-wise, is glass beads. I had like 2 tiny little teaspoons of milled fiber and then 2 big cups of the glass beads. So the fiber gives it more strength, the beads give it a lot more volume. Now I just have to figure out the right amount of resin to put into that. I have 50 grams of filler, so I'm going to start off mixing 150 grams of resin. And since this is 2 to 1, that's 100 grams of part A and 50 grams of part B. I actually have a little thing here I need to fiberglass, so I'm going to be using up just a little bit of this resin before I throw it in there. But it's probably okay because I might have to make more resin anyways. Alright, so that's about 140 grams of resin. Now supposedly mixing this in the bag keeps my hands clean, but I'm smart enough not to do this without wearing gloves because I've had things break before in the past. Alright, so this is here 140 grams of resin to 25 grams of glass beads and 25 grams of milled fiber. It's runny. It's definitely not peanut butter. I think it's appropriate to use in my holes that are facing upwards. I might need to add some more beads to make it work well for filler on the sides to stick into that. So to get an idea of flow, we're going to work on the top here. I'm using a disposable spoon because this stuff doesn't come off of stir sticks very well. That's actually not too bad. That might stick on the side. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's viscous. It's not peanut butter, but it's viscous. I'm probably going to add a little bit more glass beads just because I want to be able to stick it on the side and not have it run down. But you can see when I put it in the holes, it's not flowing super fast, and it does maintain a peak to some extent, although, you know, gravity does pull that peak down as it goes in. Now I have here almost a full scoop. Weight-wise, it's not a lot. That was 11 grams, so we're up to 36 grams of glass beads. Alright, that's feeling thick enough to stay where I put it. Let me see if I can get some of the air out of this bag. Alright, and this is where I'm trying to use it, my main application area. Got some air bubbles in there still. But yes, it's definitely viscous enough to not run down the side. Might be a little viscous to be sticking, but no, that's pretty good with the spreader bar. So yeah, that's a good kind of Bondo-like consistency. I have placed the fiberglass putty, or epoxy with glass beads and a little bit of milled fiberglass putty, all around these edges, kind of using it like Bondo, obviously going in, you know, holes. Obviously I need to sand this down, you know, especially some of these edges here where I was putting it on when it started to kick a little bit. But essentially that'll make this entire back surface that wraps around the two sides and goes around the back nice and smooth when I go to put the fiberglass cloth over the top of it. so this guy's going to fold down there. This guy's going to fold around here. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to take this bit off. And then when I do this, I can fold that there, fold this around there, like so. I have 2 layers of the fiberglass cloth down here. In a few places it's super smooth because I kind of pooled a little bit of excess epoxy on it. Other places you can feel the weave of the cloth. I'm going to sand the entire thing down. I may come back with just resin and a foam brush and kind of smooth out everything before I paint it, because this is kind of visible on the outside of the boat. But right now I'm done with the bench outsides, and I'm going to be moving on to the seat and the back of the seat and getting all that stuck in place. Also of note, I used up the very last of my slow hardener about halfway through this, and when I switched over to the next one I realized it was the medium hardener. I had decided after doing about, I don't know, 15 or 20 gallons of epoxy resin that I knew what I was doing enough to move up to the faster hardener. I kind of wish I hadn't been on this particular surface, which is kind of the largest square footage I've done in a single set of resin. But I was able to go through. It took me about 50 minutes total to do the whole thing. And you know, the pot life was okay. The places I'd done before had not dried too much when I was putting the last little coats on and stuff. But I certainly would not have wanted to do something this big with the fast hardener. I think the medium's going to be just fine for everything else I'm doing. Now that I pretty much know what I'm doing with this. But you know, if you have lots of time and you don't want to be rushed, the slow hardener is the way to go. After sanding in the correct light, you can see all the places where the epoxy resin kind of flowed a little bit and wasn't quite level. It's especially bad on the vertical surfaces, not the horizontal surfaces. But out here, there's a few places where there were drips that came down and had to be knocked down and so forth. I haven't vacuumed the dust off, so the dust is kind of making it easier to see here. But the next step is vacuuming the dust, and then I'll have to come back and put some more resin on these surfaces if I want them to be very smooth, but I'll do that after I build up the inside of the seat here. Like sandpaper, the Ziploc bag around your epoxy scale should be changed more frequently than you think it needs it. So everything except the drawer for the bottom, the 2 front doors, and the actual bench seat and back of the bench seat is 46.6 pounds. Time for a sturdiness test. Seems reasonable. Now that I have it in this orientation, I have a lot more sanding to do to get rid of bumps like that. All of these epoxy bumps that rolled over the side and made bumps. I have pieces of fiberglass sticking up here that I need to get this whole thing nice and flat there as well. And some bumps are in here and that type of stuff. So once I get all that stuff sanded back down, I can start working on the bench seat and the back and the supports for the back.